Hello, folks. Welcome to Science Talk. I'm your host, Jim Massa. Well, I want to discuss with you some recent findings that the world still warmed in 2020, even with a reduction in greenhouse gases that were emitted. So, yes, we know the greenhouse gases fell because it's not due to anything humans are doing necessarily in a way of mitigating the exhaust release and how much fossil fuels are burned, but it's simply because of the lockdown from the COVID virus. So, right, 2020, the year of the coronavirus, year of global lockdown. Well, partly, wasn't for the entire year. So, what happened? A record fall in emissions of greenhouse gases occurred. It was 34 billion tons of CO2 was added to the atmosphere. This is a decrease of 7% when you compare to 2019. Okay? This is based on a new study that was published in the journal Earth System Science Data. If governments follow the economic shutdown with what the UN calls a green pandemic recovery, then by 2030, greenhouse gas emissions could decrease by up to 25%. That's a big if. Right now, the plan is heading towards what a second report says an increase of 3 degrees C by the end of the century. That is, in my view, and based on what I'm seeing in other research, that is an underestimation. It's more like 5 to 7, which is still, even 3C will be catastrophic. Imagine 5 to 7. And a third summary of the last 12 months finds that even with the lockdown from the pandemic, the World Meteorological Organization basically states that the year 2020 looks like it will be one of the 3 warmest on record, in the warmest decade on record. The warmest 6 years ever recorded have all happened since 2015. Do you sense a trend? So, to be on track to meet the Paris Agreement Accord of 2015, that means you're conceding and going to go past 1.5. You're not going to try and keep it to under 2. Good luck. Okay. Humankind has to reduce emissions by around 1 to 2 billion tons a year for the next 10 years. Is that decline? Will this decline continue? Will emissions rebound? What do you think? What was the amount not added this year due to the shutdown? 2.4 billion tons of CO2. Well, once the vaccine becomes more widespread and it's things start opening up again, air flights are going to jump up. People are going to be driving, going back into vehicles, driving all over the place. It's going to be back to business as usual. Call me a cynic, but that's what I see happening. So Corinne Leclerc at the University of East Anglia in the UK says, all the elements are not yet in place for sustained decreases in global emissions, and the emissions are slowly edging back to 2019 levels. Government actions to stimulate the economy at the end of the COVID-19 pandemic can also help lower emissions and tackle climate change. So here's the message from the United Nations Environmental Programme's latest emissions gap report. Examining the gap between what nations promised to do in Paris and what is actually happening, it warns that a 7% drop in emissions during 2020 translates to a reduction in global warming by 2050 of no more than 0.01 degree Celsius. In other words, diddly squat. Nations stepped into economic recovery with plans to advance renewable energy and save fossil fuel use. A 25% emissions cut could indeed give the likelihood of meeting the 2 degrees C limit as agreed in the Paris Agreement. So they're basically saying, yeah, 1.5 is not likely. Ocean heat. Before I get to that, I want to say one other thing. Greenhouse gases continue to inflict more and more burdens. Right now, the world, according to this report, is 1.2 C warmer. It's more like 1.4, pushing 1.5. The WMO Secretary General Petteri Talas says there's at least a 1 in 5 chance of it temporarily exceeding 1.5 C by 2024. Try sooner. Now on to ocean heat. Has reached record levels. 80% of the planet experienced at least one marine heat wave in the last year. So says a summary of the year based on evidence from January to October. In the Siberian Arctic, temperatures are 5 degrees C above normal. The Arctic summer sea ice is the second lowest since records began 42 years ago. California's Death Valley in August, the thermometer hit 54.4 degrees C, the highest anywhere in the world for at least 80 years. 2020 has unfortunately been yet another extraordinary year for our climate. We saw extreme temperatures on land, sea, especially in the Arctic. Wildfires consumed vast areas in Australia, Siberia, U.S. West Coast, South America, Africa, sending plumes of smoke circumnavigating the globe, said Professor Talas. We saw a record number of hurricanes in the Atlantic, including unprecedented back-to-back categories 4 hurricanes in Central America in November. Flooding in parts of Africa, Southeast Asia led to massive population displacement, undermined food security for millions. Translation: climate refugees, people starving. I am tired of hearing food insecurity term being used. That's a euphemism for saying people are hungry and starving. The late, great George Carlin did a fantastic routine about euphemisms. He would have a field day with this one. So, I want to address that point about the oceans, how much they're warming up. Remember, oceans have water has a high specific heat. They're absorbing a lot of the energy. The oceans have been saving our bacon thus far, but they will not continue to do so. As the temperatures keep warming up, gas solubility decreases. At some point, CO2 will begin to outgas from the ocean back into the atmosphere. And don't forget, CO2 plus water equals carbonic acid, so we're reducing the pH. And the Arctic, it's warming basically now 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. I saw a recent study indicating 4 times faster. The consensus is now it's more than 2 times fast, it's about 3 times fast. So that's happening. Everything is exponentially increasing. That's what's going on. And this notion, we're trying to keep it under, 2C, or, they're already conceding 1.5 C is not likely. To try and keep it under 2 C is also not unlikely. Why do I say that? Well, we did this experiment earlier this year with the lockdown, mass reduction, right? 2.4 billion tons less greenhouse gases emitted, decrease of 7%, but worldwide temperatures still continue to go up. Why is that? Because of the thermal inertia in the system. Something I keep stressing, but it's an important concept to remember. So even if you went to zero emissions, still thermal inertia in the system, that warming will continue, and that's because of all the positive feedback loops we have unleashed, especially with the permafrost thawing and the methane and nitrous oxide being released. We're creating climate refugees. People, they're going to be forced out of where they live. People going hungry. It's almost like if you could, just be a removed observer and just see what happens as the century unfolds. It's not going to be pretty at all. So, we had all these fires. I mentioned that. Australia, Siberia, west coast of the U.S., Africa, South America, the Amazon. That's adding CO2 to the atmosphere. And fires are here to stay. They just are. So we did this experiment. We reduced some greenhouse emissions. They didn't even put a dent in a dent. It mattered for nothing. So, interesting times we live in. Thank you for your time. Hello, folks. This is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.